Welcome to Stories from the Center of the Universe, the podcast about the human experience.
Chris Harper, welcome to the Center of the Universe.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
I guess we should mention that we connected through Andrew Mauck.
Yeah, we'll give him some help received, some credit for it.
How do you and Andrew know each other?
So we went to high school together, and I was making the transition from private school to public school, and I was on the football team and happened to know him just briefly. He lived in my neighborhood. We grew up next to each other, and he was always the public school kid that don't go near, but for the most part, we got along. And as the school year progressed, actually in English class, we had English class together, and I helped him on majority of his homework because it's Andrew. So
English was not his thing.
No, not much of anything.
So that's interesting. Private to public. Is there a story there?
I'm not really entirely sure why my parents. I was fortunate enough that I'm one of four, and my parents all put us through private school, K through 8th grade, and then made the transition to Freeman in high school. And I guess that was just to mix it up and get some flair into it. So.
Yeah, the mindset maybe is, hey, no need to go through public schools K through 8 for various reasons. But hey, the real world has people from lots of different backgrounds. Public schools may be more representative of that. Maybe that was their logic.
And actually, I was thinking about, in the 8th grade, going to Benedictine, looking at that. I really, the way that they kind of recruited you is, hey, you get a saber, your senior year. And I was like, oh, this is cool, military. I like this, but didn't go that route. So.
Well, Catholic and military is quite the combo.
Yeah.
For Benedictine.
Yeah.
A lot of guilt, a lot of discipline, a lot of tough love.
Very much so. Couldn't imagine it.
So y'all met in English class or the football field?
So we met football field. So my a little story of mine was a little bit different. Is that I was freshman year playing football, doing the whole 2 days. Meeting all of my classmates and playing in the 9th grade team, and then. Right before school started is when I went to my aunt's river house, and that led to a jet ski accident.
So you were, what, 14, 15?
Yeah, about 14 years old. And so that kind of delayed my, basically high school start to public school. So background on that is that we were 2005 we were up there just as a family. I took one of my best friends at the time that he was also a public school kid and trying to get in, and took him up there trying to impress him. And my aunt had 2 jet skis, and we had been going on the whole day riding them back and forth. And what happened was it started getting a little rough out there, and
what was the body of water again?
It was oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank. Like Whitestone area down in the river.
Rappahannock.
Rappahannock, yeah, that's right. Rappahannock River. And being 14 years old, just being a knucklehead, driving around as fast as you can.
Your brain's not fully working.
No, not at all. And probably in hindsight should not have been on a jet ski by myself and doing just idiot stuff. But so we did that all day, and then around 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, there was a storm coming in, and we were like, let's take them out one more time before, we have to saddle up and go back to the real world of playing football and all that fun stuff. So my buddy and my sister were on one jet ski. I was on the other, and we decided to leave and, drive out. I was like, why are you riding with him? He's like, it's because it's your sister. I get to go ride with your sister. I was like, all right, whatever, weirdo. But so we were driving out there, having, the time of our lives. Didn't probably do the proper procedures before leaving, check the gas or what have you. So my sister and my buddy on one, I was on the other. We stopped, met and talked with my parents that were on our Carolina skiff. Talked to them briefly, and they were like, all right, time to get back into the dock. So we were like, okay, fine, we'll go back. The storm started kind of coming a little bit. The waves were getting a little rough, and my sister and my buddy, they ran out of gas, and they were probably, I don't know how far ahead of me, but far enough that I didn't see them. The waves were getting choppy and rough, and I essentially went over a wave. They were floating there, and I T-boned them.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So the last thing I really remember was pulling off the dock, and that comment my buddy said. So I don't remember anything after that. But what I was told is that I T-boned them, and the way that they know that is because my parents were, when they were leaving, my mom happened to see me flying through the air, hit the water, and she, told my dad, hey, let's go back, go see what happened with these guys. So they drove back, and my sister and my buddy essentially went over there, went over to me, see me floating face down with a life jacket on.
And they were fine, your sister and buddy.
They were fine at the moment. My buddy ended up getting a really bad concussion. My sister probably also had a concussion, but also broke the two front of her teeth, her two main front teeth. And they swam over to me and saw that I was floating upside down, flipped me over, which apparently you're also not supposed to do in case there's neck injury. But what they saw was...
But you needed to breathe.
Right, correct, yeah. And what they saw was my sister apparently was wearing like a lighter color bathing suit that had turned dark when she got up to me because of the blood that was just coming out and coming out of my body. It was coming out from my ears. So my dad picked me up out of the water and got me to shore as fast as he could. And since the Carolina skiff flat bottom, pulled up, ramped up all the way on the shore, and the details in between, I don't, it's been almost 20 years, but those were apparently that we got a ambulance there as quick as possible. He continued to say, hey, stay with me, don't go on me. And got an ambulance there, picked me up. They took me to the local hospital there.
Which is not really a hospital.
No. And they saw my condition and realized that, hey, we have to get a medevac here as quick as possible. And so as they were, I'm not entirely sure of the details, but as they were going over the bridge, the big bridge.
The Route 3 bridge.
Mm-hmm, yeah. The Route 3 bridge. The ambulance, they had to stop on the bridge because they couldn't find a pulse. So they were like, we're losing them, essentially.
They did CPR on the bridge.
They did CPR on the bridge, and apparently, I don't know if this is true too, but I got the defibrillator there on the bridge as well. But
they stopped
on the bridge, yeah, which is already like might be a no, but
well, it's also a bridge that people expect will have cars fall through it someday. It's not the best bridge.
No. So
20 years ago it might have been a little bit better, but still not a great
I'm sure
bridge.
it was better, back then. But so then they got me to the hospital, decided that I needed to be medivac'd, realized that I needed to be in a coma so that I didn't go into cardiac arrest. So they put me in like a self-induced coma or somehow.
They induced a coma like in transit.
Once I was at the hospital.
Got it.
So then medevac, I wouldn't go into cardiac arrest. So I guess I got medevac to MCV downtown Richmond, in the trauma unit. So that happened on a Sunday. I woke up on a Wednesday. They couldn't get me out of the coma once I landed. So they were like, hey, I don't know all the details of how I ended up coming out of it, but came out of it. And they were like, I just woke up and I was like, where am I? Had no idea what happened. Had tubes every which way. It was like, what is going on? Where am I? Just dazed and confused with it.
Was anybody in the room when you came to?
My mom was. She is quite the character, and looked over at me and was like, "Oh my gosh!" Started crying. And my dad was outside, and then he ended up coming in. And
did Dad cry?
I don't remember. I don't know. Probably. We'll say he did. But I woke up and had everything, all those tubes in, and I was like, what happened? She said, hey, you were in a terrible jet ski accident. You had to get medivac'd here. I had a neck brace on, because I tore all these ligaments in my neck. And I was like, well, am I going to die? Like the way that she described it seemed really horrific. And I mean, it was, but I didn't know. And she was like, she's quite the character. And most people are like, no, everything's going to be fine. She was like, well, we don't know yet.
Oh, gosh.
And I was like, wait, what?
She's supposed to be encouraging, I think, at that point.
So I started getting all worried and concerned. And, everything kind of the next few days, they were running some tests. Everything was looking fine, checking out. They were like, you're on the right side of recovering. Then my dad made a comment to the neurosurgeon and saying, when everything was happening, there was blood coming out of his ears. So they were like, okay, well, the CT scans or the one of the scans or whatever, the X-ray said that he did fracture his skull. So that kind of makes sense, but there's something else that might have to be wrong. Let's do an MRI just to make sure everything's okay, or CT scan, one of those. And that's when they found 2 pseudoaneurysms in my carotid artery, left carotid artery, essentially right behind my ear. When they saw that, they said, hey, we have to do surgery right away on this. So they ended up going back in, running the test, doing the surgeries. They did them successfully, stented and coiled the 2 aneurysms. And they said, as I was coming out, hey, if they didn't do that in the next few days, then I probably wouldn't be here. So that was a shock for sure. And then I was in the hospital for another like month-ish, just recovering from that, watching all my vitals, everything. So that essentially delayed my my public school
big time.
Yeah, initiation. And I remember before, because brain trauma and everything, they were like, we're going to ease you into school. So I was signed up for like German, for a bunch of like extracurricular activities, because I'm a private school kid. I knew how to be, take on public school.
Well-rounded.
Yeah. And I go in there, dropped German, had like 2 study halls, and then happened to have an English class with Andrew. And then one of the other ones was this AutoCAD, engineering class that I was 2 months behind on. But that teacher, Mr. Gradwell, was like, hey, I want you, you want to be an engineer. Let's get you set and right, and we'll get you up to speed. So very thankful that he pushed me, and, through a lot of hard work, was able to stick that class out and did well in that one.
So the only issue academically was you were just 2 months behind. You didn't have any like long-term effects.
No,
cognitively.
I did all these tests, like I don't even remember the names of them, but they were like, hey, I remember they were like, well, what is your name? And I was like, well, still the same. And they're like, what day is it? I was like, I have no idea. They're like, oh, and writing down the thing. I'm like,
that's not good.
Yeah. Like, what color is this? I was like, black. What color is this? White. So no real issues. No, that was probably the biggest thing, is that I was like, hey, nothing happened. It just was like 2 months of my life that everyone was worried about me, and I wasn't really worried. And, being 14, you don't really know I didn't know what was going on behind the scenes. So I was like, I'm fine. This is great. A lot of attention.
Did you have a fractured skull?
Yeah. So I did have a fractured skull, tore a bunch of ligaments in my neck, and was in a neck brace for a month, which was funny because when I did end up going to high school and going to homecoming for the first time, asking a date, there's pictures of me, with my neck crooked because they had the neck brace on, maybe wrong, or I don't know, but 115 pounds, looking, goofy. So that was really the only thing physical that was
and the
wrong.
And the 2 aneurysms, certainly, yeah.
2 aneurysms.
So from the neck down, below the neck, nothing.
Nothing was wrong. That surgery that they do, I've had three more of them. Now they're angiograms. So they go up through the groin. So I had, three little incisions in my groin. They go up, bypass the heart, do everything, and put in stents and coils up there. And being 14, I was like, oh, this is whatever. Okay.
Yeah.
And my last angiogram was, I think, 2015. And when I was going through the procedure and them talking about it, being an adult, I was like, this is kind of risky, and I don't really like this anesthesia. I'm still kind of awake. I look over and see like them going in my brain. Like, it's a weird surgery because they can't put you down completely. So,
Do you have to have more angiograms?
TBD on that. I'm supposed to probably get a few checkups, but my last one was clear bill of health. Live your life how you would. So
before your first accident, what kind of kid were you? Super involved in sports, outside a ton?
Yeah, so we grew up here in Richmond, and had a family farm out in Buckingham County. So always outdoors, shooting, hunting, just getting into trouble in the right way. Just a normal childhood. Always wanted to be either an engineer, kind of mixed in with a magician. Oh yeah, still a magician.
Really?
Shout out. Oh yeah, still.
What's your best trick?
I watch a lot of YouTube tutorials first before performing, and I performed for my nephew last year, and it was more of a comedy show with magic in it. So I don't really have any good tricks.
Are you on YouTube?
No, far from it.
Should you be?
I don't know. My brother tends to say, I don't know if you've ever seen Arrested Development, but I'm
very familiar with the concept, but I think I've only seen maybe a couple episodes.
So there's a brother on there, Job, who is a magician, an aspiring magician, and I think that a lot of things that he does is I emulate. So in the magician world, of course.
Who plays that role?
Oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank on his actual name.
Like a redheaded guy with a mustache and maybe bald head, or am I thinking of that?
No, I would have to.
Because it's Bateman and his buddy, the Canadian guy, Will something.
I think yeah,
Will?
Spear. Yeah.
He used to be married to Amy Poehler.
Yeah, I think.
Will Arnett.
Yeah, I think that might be who it is. I don't know.
That might be Joe.
Yeah, just goofy. I think that is him. Yeah. So yeah. But yeah, normal childhood.
What number out of the 4 are you?
I'm number 2.
Okay.
So
So the oldest middle kid.
Oh yeah. And the tallest. But yeah, sports were always a huge thing. Primarily football. Remember I did karate for a while with my dad, and then I was always kind of a shy kid, actually a very shy kid. And I was doing karate with my dad, and I remember they were like, "All right, well now that you got this, you're going to start competing against just other people." I was like, nope, not doing it. I quit. So I quit that. But like my dad, he coached me all through, like, I guess since 3rd grade till 8th grade football. And then, played lacrosse in high school as well. And he was my coach there. So he was a huge, advocate of sports, huge, mentor for sports as well.
What'd you do in the winter?
Hunt. Really just
hunting was that big of a deal for you? Did you ever try basketball? Because you're taller than me by a good couple inches.
Yeah, so even in high school, the coach was like, "Come on out, just be on the practice team. You don't have to do too much, but we just need bodies." And I was like, "I'm just really bad at basketball. Better at hitting people." But we ended up playing in high school. We played the YMCA league, as adults, which we won championships. Andrew was on that squad too. But I just big bodied, and I was always a football player at heart, playing basketball, which is never good. And my wife is a very talented basketball player. And
so 1-on-1 she could take you no problem.
Oh yeah, she does all the time, and it's actually frustrating. But I played as an adult a few years ago, like the Big Ben Wallace's league, and I'm just not good in that competition. So good, and she would go to those games and be like, "You need to learn to box out, do this," and she would just get so frustrated. So
you would enjoy boxing out. If you like hitting people.
Oh, I did, and then she would get on me because I do all this with my hands and hit people. My dad always used to say, because he was bad at basketball too, he was like, "You got 5 fouls, you might as well use them." So.
I know a lot of football players who play basketball, and they play it like it's a football game.
Yeah. So I've actually, I guess last year, was playing in the Ben Wallace League and ended up fracturing a rib, going against a guy that was way too big and talented. And so I have since retired from competitive basketball.
I understand.
Ankles and everything, just not my thing.
So playing football, were you always a defender, or did you play both sides?
So, Little League, I was primarily always defensive line, the long, lengthy, kind of ish fast defensive line. High school was always, high school, we can get back to that, but played defensive end and then also tight end, just because it made sense that, big guy, big target. But yeah, so I guess we can pivot to that too. So after the jet ski accident, I was medically no contact sports, no nothing.
Yeah, I can't imagine any doctor would say, sure, go hit your head against other kids' heads.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And so the whole thing, this thought of what I had was, hey, I went through this horrific accident. I'm still alive. Nothing happened to me. I'm a teenage boy. I'm indestructible. I can do whatever I want. So that kind of went down weird rabbit holes of like, hey, I'm a risk taker now, and really, in a weird way, opened my shell in a way, because I used to be shy, and then I was like, hey, I'm the jet ski boy, and
I almost died. So
yeah.
what's to lose?
Yeah, I'm like, hey, whatever. So taking a little bit more risk, more outgoing.
Wild how that happens.
Oh yeah,
because you would expect you'd stay in your shell.
Oh yeah, and I just was making friends, public school, new transition, just excelling in school, even though I'm supposed to be, terrible brain trauma, and I was great and fine. So went through all that. Then that led up to, I think, my sophomore year, winter of sophomore year. I went up to Erie, Pennsylvania, because that's where the neurosurgeon that did my work, he ended up moving up there for another practice. Got another angiogram there. He looked at me and said, hey, live your life. You're free. Your aneurysms are contained how they should be. No, nothing worse. So live your life.
Most docs in that position would take the safe road.
Yeah.
Right, because they don't want any liability.
Yeah, no, they probably, I'm sure people that this goes on, they're like, why would he ever say that? But for the most part, everything was fine with it, and he said, live your life. And one of my biggest things was like, hey, can I ride roller coasters still? And he was like, sure, yeah.
Because you're 15.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I actually always wanted to be a pilot too. So I was like, can I ride roller coasters and fly? He's like, yeah, okay, whatever you want, just do whatever. So that was the winter of my sophomore year in high school. So I started, working out with the team, realizing I missed 2 years of playing football, JV or whatever, 9th grade. And so I was like, all right, this year, my junior year, that's when you start getting looked at by recruits and going into college. So I'm going to be great. Got clean bill of health. So I was like, I'm going to play lacrosse this spring. It's going to be wonderful. So played lacrosse on the JV squad. Loved it. Once again, had a lot of frustration. So basically was a football player with a stick and would hit people. And
yeah, you have a weapon now.
Yeah. Now I'm like, oh, this is even more fun. So the lacrosse season ended in the spring. And then we were up at our family farm, me and another buddy, and we were driving a Kubota, which is like a glorified golf cart that's diesel, utility. And
you're 2 years away from the jet ski accident.
Yeah.
At this point.
Just a little over 2 years or a year and a half. I think it's around 16 months away from it, and was like, hey, let's go, and kind of that daredevil-ish whatever. And so we were riding up and down through the trails over in the farm, and going down as fast as we can go, and making turns, outrageous turns, and just being idiots. Call it a mud dogging or something, when you tear up the trails and just being idiots. So we were going down this hill, and right before we went down, actually Andrew called us in spotty cell phone service, but he was playing in a varsity tournament, lacrosse tournament, and was like, hey, what are y'all doing? We told him. He's like, just be safe. We're like, all right, yeah, what an idiot. All right, whatever, telling us to be safe. So hung up the phone, and we were like, all right, let's go down as fast as possible this time, and then we'll call it quits. Don't touch the brakes. Just go down, metal, pedal to the metal as fast as you can, make the turn. And I was like, yeah, this will be great. So essentially did that and took a turn that was too sharp, and there was like a little bit of a dirt mound on it. The way that I hit it kind of flipped
You were driving.
I was driving, of course, naturally.
Yeah.
The risk taker. And the way that I hit the dirt mount kind of elevated and put the ATV or Kubota on a side, and for whatever reason I stuck my leg out, and yeah, it then
You stuck it out to brace.
yeah, essentially, falling off a bike, you stick your leg out to brace, which once again, hindsight, it's 2020, but that was probably the dumbest thing ever, because then I snapped my femur and was the way that it...
And once again, you're in the middle of nowhere.
Middle of nowhere. I don't even know where the hospital is there, but it's about an hour.
Charlottesville, probably.
Yeah, probably Charlottesville.
Yeah.
It's an hour and 30 minutes west of Richmond, so still in the middle of nowhere. But the way that it landed, it dragged, and probably just momentum went another 10 yards. My leg was under it, and my the battery, where the battery is held, was also there's kind of like a sharp ridge under there, so it grabbed hold of my calf muscle too, and opened that up nicely.
Did it cut the muscle?
I guess. I mean, I don't know. I still have a scar there. It looks like a Nike check, and so I always said I was sponsored by Nike.
Nice.
But
in a very weird way.
In a very weird way, but I'm not sponsored. And so I'm sitting there laying like that. My buddy is above me because we did have our seatbelts on, so that was a positive. And he undoes his seatbelt and was like, "Whew, that was crazy. Glad we're all right. All right, let's do it again. Let's flip it up and let's do it again." I was like, "I don't know, man. Something's wrong. Like I can't feel my leg." And he was like, "Oh no, you're fine. You're fine." I was like,
"So you didn't hear a pop or?" Well, because I guess the Kubota was kind of loud.
Yeah, I guess that was loud and just adrenaline kicking in, and it just happened so quick. And I was like, I can't feel anything in my leg. And he was like, "Oh, you're fine." And I couldn't.
He obviously hadn't looked at you.
No, he was. So it was still on its side, and I was kind of pinned back. I was like, I can't move down to grab my seatbelt and undo it. So he helped me with my seatbelt, and when he did that, it's kind of gross, but I essentially unraveled and looked back, and my femur was not through, but it looked like I had two kneecaps in a way of both bending in the same way.
So right above your kneecap is where the break was?
Yeah, essentially I don't know, six inches above my kneecap. Just a clean break right there, and I was like, oh my gosh, what happened? So really freaked out there. And
you're not walking. No way.
No, not walking, not even knowing how do we get out of here? What are we going to do? My dad was on the tractor, bush hogging a field or something. So you always hear about, these grandmas that lift cars off babies and adrenaline kicks in. And my buddy, he was in a fight a few months earlier and broke his thumb because he always claims he's more of a lover, not a fighter. So he's a cast on, and I'm like, dude, get this thing off me. I'm pinned down, and he's like, all right. So 1, 2, 3. Yeah, it's not moving, man. Sorry.
Adrenaline wasn't flowing a ton for him.
No. So I was like, all right, well, go get my dad. So he ran probably the fastest. He was our goalie in lacrosse.
Typically not a runner.
Not a runner.
Yeah.
And, probably ran, a Olympic record mile to go get
adrenaline probably kicked in at some point.
At some point he's ready to rock and roll. Went and grabbed my dad. They came back and assessed the situation. Was like, oh my gosh, what did you do? My dad, after reliving me almost dying 16 months ago,
he probably couldn't imagine.
No. And so he comes off and is like, you stupid son of a bitch, what did you do? God damn it. And I'm like, I don't know. So both of them then decide that they're going to try to lift it off. They couldn't lift it off. So he went and back, got the tractor, and got the front, I guess, lift, and was lifting it up. And as he was lifting it up, it slid back down. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to pass out. Like, what the hell? And they eventually got it off, and got the it was a Suburban, like a GMC XL giant Suburban. Threw me in the back, put my leg up.
Were you bleeding through the skin, or everything was contained?
Everything was contained except for my calf. My calf was bleeding. But they put me up, put my leg up, and then it just flopped down like I had nothing. So put 2 packs of bird seed next to it to hold it in place, and then hightailed out of there. Was going on Route 60 about 85 miles an hour. Cop happened to pull us over, and my dad did what you're not supposed to do. He jumped out of the car,
started running towards the guy.
Yeah, and the cop was like, "Get back in your car." He's like, "I got someone in the back," and opened the back, and the cop ran up and was like, "Holy shit!" Like, looked at it, and I was just like, in and out of consciousness.
But you were mostly conscious, a lot more conscious than you were with the jet ski.
Oh yeah, so I remember this one was definitely more mentally tolling, just from the actual physical aspect, but also just living through and dealing with that trauma. So they get an ambulance there, and they're going to rush me to the hospital. And just halfway through, they were talking, and they're like, "We got to get a medivac'd to MCV. This is trauma." And so I get medivac'd again for the second time.
Are you even 16 at this point?
I don't think so, because I might have had my learners. So almost 16. Yeah. So I do remember that, because step back a little bit. I got an underage drinking ticket my sophomore year.
You were a fun kid.
Yeah. That was great over Christmas break. And so I remembered why, because my parents ground me until my birthday, my 15th birthday, which is in May. So it was the week after my freedom of 5 months being grounded, was when I went up to the farm, and then a week later snapped my femur and essentially was bedridden, so kind of grounded again for another 3 months.
Grounded whether your parents wanted to or not.
Yeah, that would have been better to ground me then. So yeah, I did have my learners at the time, but yeah, I mean, still a young kid and being an idiot. I had a cut on my forehead from a lacrosse game, because I was a football player and just hitting people, and happened to cut. Those helmets aren't made for high collisions.
No, they're not.
So cut that, and then they put me in another neck brace, because they were like, "Hey, you hit your head." I'm like, "I didn't hit my head. Don't put me in this neck brace." But they put me in the neck brace, and I have half kid now, but I actually liked that medevac because I was conscious for it, and I love helicopters, and I was
fun ride.
Yeah,
despite the leg break.
Yeah, I was looking out the window like, "Oh, this is awesome! Look at me! I'm flying downtown Richmond." And
why didn't they take you to Charlottesville?
I don't know. I think the trauma unit at MCV maybe was better to handle what they thought was something different. And at the time, I also didn't realize that your femur also has a giant artery that runs, that can be very bad, that if you nick or hit, my leg was swelling just from the natural part of trauma, and they thought maybe that there was some bleeding, and that they had to
was.
Yeah, that they had to do. They thought that I hit the big ligament again, but I didn't, so that was good.
Well, so at your tender age, you've had 2 very traumatic things that most people have never experienced. One like that. You're not 16 yet, so you recover from that. Let's say the bone is mostly healed. Are you Mr. Risk Taker again after that, or are you a little more cautious this time?
So that it kind of, I mean, there's certain things that happen in your life that dictate the way that you kind of continue living. And one of the I guess medevac unit guys that was there, I was telling him my story, because I was like, "Oh, this is my second medevac," and
he's like, "What?"
Yeah, he was like, "You're an idiot," and he actually said something that I still remember to this day. It was like, "Listen, if you keep acting like this and you keep doing these dumbass stunts, you're going to be dead before you're 18." And to your point, that kind of stuck to me a little bit, of being like, all right, well, maybe I shouldn't be as risk adverse, but I'm not going to be back in my shell. I'm just going to probably,
You can live life and still be a little bit measured on the edges.
Right. Yeah. So that put a pretty thing that I still think about. And some people say I'm still a little too risky, but can't hold everything back. So
no, I mean, life's meant to be fun. Life's supposed
Right.
to have risk, and if you run away from risk, then you're not living.
right.
But there's some things that are just plain old dumb.
Yeah, and so I think I stay away from the super dumb things. And I think that those two accidents, the way that I look at them, like they did slow me down. They did kind of take away from potentially going a different route of being a better recruited college athlete. But at the end of the day, like one of the greatest things that I think that I am able to do is always be a forever optimistic person, and I think it's because I was kind of toyed on the levels of, hey, might not come back from here, so I'm like, oh well,
You came closer to the edge than I ever have.
yeah. So my wife always jokes with me. She's like, oh, you're my forever optimistic. I'm like, well, it's raining, but the grass needs water. So
Yeah, that's right, and I'm still here.
yeah. So
Both of these happened before your junior year playing football.
yep.
Did you play your junior year?
No.
I was going to say, there's no way.
So the recovery on that was more just taxing. I had to essentially relearn how to walk. I still, my leg, I mean, I don't have any issues now, but my leg was basically so weak. The muscles were all jacked up. I still have like scar tissue on the back of my leg. Just the way that they twisted it. So I spent quite some time just on the couch, and then eventually got into rehab. I went into a, being at 16 or 15 years old, a pretty dark place of, I'm missing out. I can't do anything. Why does God always do this to me? I'm, taking pain medications and everything else. I'm like, I'm just depressed, essentially. And it was really tough. Very hard for me to kind of compartmentalize, like, hey, I was on the upswing after a terrible accident, and now this. That was really hard. I think mentally, definitely more challenging, especially being so young and not really going through puberty too, and being like emotions.
And your brain's not fully formed, and
no. So, but that I kind of think it. Give the cards that you're dealt, and that kind of led to, hey, I'm going to get better. I'm going to get back on the field somehow. I'm going to prove myself that I can still do things. So then that led to me being the film crew my junior year, personal film crew for the football team.
What was it about football that you loved being around? Because obviously being on the film crew is not playing, but you wanted to be there.
Yeah.
In the middle of it.
I mean, I'm not entirely sure. I think my love for the game, I knew that was something that I was very good at previously, or, I thought I was good at it. I think that the fact that I've been around it for so long that, people come up to me and say like, oh, your dad was one of the best football players in high school and all this stuff. And I loved it. I loved everything about it. I went to a Art Monk football camp, actually.
Are you a Commanders fan?
I am not. Complete opposite. Cowboys fan.
Okay.
Just like
they're both bad.
Mike Henry.
Neither one's good for me.
Well, I know. Your Bucks are your Bucks are your Bucks.
Good memory.
Oh,
They're mostly a tragedy, but anyway.
But so I went to an Art Monk football camp, and one of the commanders at the time, he was saying, football is the greatest sport, greatest thing ever, because it is literally, you can do physical assault and legal assault every single play. And I just soaked it up and loved it. And defense was always like, hey, I don't have the greatest hands. I'm not the fastest, but I will hit you hard. And I just loved it.
It's the funnest thing to do in football.
Oh, yeah.
Actually. It's better than scoring a touchdown. Like an awesome tackle is better than scoring a touchdown.
Yeah. And I guess playing since third grade till through college in college and everything, I only scored one touchdown. But, there's something about a sack when it's the greatest thing ever.
Yeah.
So, that
sack is probably almost as valuable as a touchdown.
Oh yeah, especially a third down, like you get one of those in you, and then there's nothing like it. So
So you're the film crew guy. Your junior year. Did you play lacrosse your junior year?
I did. I ended up making varsity and playing second line midi. So just running up and down.
Well, middies have to handle the ball.
Yeah, and I wasn't the best ball handler. I was known as the enforcer.
Okay.
Kind of, just pick up the ball, get it across midline, give it to an attackman, and get off the field. I had a few goals.
All right.
I had the leverage shot, so I would do a jump shot essentially and just jump as high as I can and try to bounce it in because the goalie didn't know when it was, coming 8 feet high.
Yeah, I was going to say taking advantage of your height.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I played junior lacrosse, loved it, and that kind of set me up for my...
And no problems with your leg?
No, I mean, not anything. Like, my rehab was great, and just I probably knowing what I know now would probably have done a few things different in terms of rehab, but I mean, didn't really have any crazy issues. Had patella tendonitis just because things were weak. And maybe a little bit different size-wise of my leg, but still had a metal rod in there and screws. And
You still have that?
oh yeah,
Yeah. Rest of your life, right?
I guess so. I guess I could get it taken out if I wanted to, but that's another story. Is my the week going back to the hospital for a checkup, we were rushing to the elevator, and my dad was running to get the elevator, kicked out one of the crutches, and I landed on that leg. So one of the screws are actually bent. We got the X-ray, and it's like a almost upside down frowny face.
Oh my gosh!
My dad told the doctor, he's like, just screwing with him. He's like, "You put it in a bent screw," and he's like, "I did not do such a thing." So he's quite the character. But yeah, that was I guess those will be in for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Between all the metal that's in me, I was like, hey, if I do go, like, cremation, take all that stuff, and if it survives the heat, like, these are nice memories in a way.
Here's what's left of Chris.
Yeah, not too morbid, but yeah, I think they're full of metal. But yeah, so I was able to play my senior year, which did really well.
But you weren't a college recruit.
No, so I essentially missed that, the junior year, most important year in high school from a recruiting standpoint. I was actually looking at redoing my junior year and going...
Just for football?
Just because of football,
Yeah.
because, at 6'5", I guess I was 6'5", like 190 pounds. Defense fan, was relatively fast, like, hey, that could take you somewhere. So I was going to repeat my junior year and go to private school again and go to collegiate and play there, get to play with my cousin, be in my cousin's grade and everything. And I remember I've always been a big pros con list, writing pros and cons. And one of the cons was like, hey, I'm going to have to wear preppy clothes.
And at that age, that's a big deal.
Yeah,
Sure.
I was like, I don't want to wear collared shirts every day. And so ended up just playing senior year, doing well, created, super late to the recruiting side. So created a highlight film, sent it to a bunch of local schools, Division I schools, sent it to a handful, just Virginia has a great kind of recruiting focus and good colleges. So sent it to all of them. Didn't really hear back from many. Richmond was a potential walk-on opportunity. And then I was like, all right, well, actually another one, Randolph-Macon, which I was they had a lot of interest in just because, they kind of knew what they were getting for maybe a discount. So I was kind of weirdly torn between them and any kind of Division I school that would potentially offer a scholarship or a walk-on position. So ended up out of kind of my whole going back to childhood was always outside. I had an uncle that was in the Marines and Army, and grandparents. My granddad was a JAG, and my other granddad was in the Navy. So I was like, you know what? I don't know. I've kind of always wanted to be in the Marines, wanted to do military. That was probably all the World War II videos that my dad would make us watch and everything. But so I ended up applying to VMI and getting into VMI, and then talked to the coach there and sent him my tape. And he was like, hey, I want you to come on as a preferred walk-on with, if you make first or second string anytime you're here, we'll look at giving you a scholarship. So that was the greatest opportunity that I had for getting a scholarship playing Division I football. So essentially after senior year of high school, was like, let's do it and go the military route, and perfect. Everything will work out. Get to play football.
Did you enjoy the military experience at VMI?
Well,
And I say military experience, you're actually not in the military, but drill and ceremony is the same. The uniform has to be kept in certain order. You're waking up early. You're doing a lot of physical exercise.
so what I was also told my dad always said, well, technically you're in the Virginia militia. You can be called up. And I was like, you're right. So I did.
Maybe technically. I've never heard of the Virginia militia being called up like that.
It's deep in Wikipedia if you look at VMI. That I don't know. I guess back in the Civil War they were technically called
I was going to say if you're 150 years older than you are
I
now.
know. So that was the claim to fame there. But yeah, going in, I mean, I was all gung-ho on military. I was signed up for Marine ROTC, wanted to be signed up for an electrical engineer major, was all in, kind of chasing my dream for it. Got there, got yelled at by a gunnery sergeant, like the first day of football, and I was like, this kind of sucks. And then realized that electrical engineering is very hard. So I was like, you know what? I'm also going to change my major. So before school even started, we went up 2 weeks before for football, and then kind of went through that transition, and then Hell Week, and then you kind of do a Hell Week, and then you go and start classes. Before classes started, I had changed my major twice and changed my ROTC. I was like, I'm not doing Marines, not a chance, too hardcore for me. I'm focusing on football, and then changed my major because it was just too much with everything. So I definitely liked elements of the military. I was actually switched to Air Force for 2 years, and then had a serious conversation about potentially going into the Army. And was on track to commission or go to LDAC and go in as an officer, but had another setback my redshirt junior year of football, which we flew up to play Stony Brook right after Hurricane Sandy, and it was
2012.
2012.
Yeah,
and it was the coldest game I've ever played at. Like, I typically, I was a defensive outside linebacker. Of course, I'm going to wear short sleeves no matter what winter, whatever, And it was the only game when I wore 2 long sleeve shirts, and I was like, this sucks. It's freezing. We had to fly in the day of because nowhere else had power. They flipped on the power to the stadium. Playing in that game, they were, I think Stony Brook at the time, they had 2 guys that ended up going to the NFL. One of the running backs, they were just absolutely filthy, just abused us. And I remember I tackled a guy across the middle of the field and heard my shoulder pop, and looked down at our safety, which that tells you how far the ball was. It was all the way to our safety. I was like, I think there's something wrong with my shoulder. And he's like, dude, you're fine. And I couldn't lift my arm. And I was like, God, dog, what did I do? So they ended up, taping up my shoulder or whatever, and was like, oh, you're fine, keep playing. So kept playing. And then after the season, I got an MRI and ended up tearing my bicep, and my front and rear labrum had I think it was tier 3 degrade tear or something. So essentially was playing with one arm. And so then that had a trickle effect of, hey, we can't send you to LDAC and everything else. And because of my previous injuries too, they were like, hey, we're going to have to get you medical clearance in order to actually go into the military. And so I ended up getting clearance like the fall of that year. And I was like, all right, I guess I'm doing military route, like going Army, woohoo. And then the shoulder deal happened, and they were like, hey, we have to resubmit a medical thing. And then at that point I was like, I've just been hit in the head so many times with different stuff. Like, I'm done. I don't want to go military route at all.
Well, in 2012, we were getting out of Iraq, and so the need for people wasn't as great as it was maybe a few years earlier.
Yeah, there was actually like sequestration and everything else. Like, if you weren't top, I remember there was a couple of the guys that like they either got their scholarships taken away, or like, hey, we're gonna have to delay your commission. And And I was like, you know what? I'm just, after being in military school for 4 years, I'm okay.
I didn't go to a military college, but I was in the Army, and it's I imagine it's very different than the academic military school experience.
Yeah, that experience. I mean, there were elements that everyone always says, "Oh, terrible place to be, great place to be from," which, to this day is true. But I will say, like, we were just up there for my 10-year reunion and bonding with the guys there. Like, there's no, I can't even. I mean, you probably know the brotherhood that you have, and this was academia, so it's a little bit definitely different.
Still powerful, though.
Yeah, I mean, it's, the same old guys that you went waking up with, doing, class.
You went through hard things together.
Yeah. You handle adversity differently together, and that on top of being a Division I football player, too, and not having much of a winning record either. Like, you get beat down a lot, and they're always there to build you up, and you have your buddies to lean back on. So that part of the school I will always appreciate and praise, and loved it. And everything else was kind of secondary besides football. But I just, once again, every single preseason, we were always looking at the bottom of the barrel of where we were going to finish, and every single season, I would look at our schedule and be like, we can win that one. We'll win that one. We have a chance to be, 9-2, like, easily. And then 3 games winning season later, I'm like, yeah, well, that was wrong. But goes back for every optimist.
But you were an optimist. Exactly right. All right, so you were technically a rat, but I graduated high school in 87, a long time ago. But I knew a lot of guys not a lot of guys, but I knew a few guys that played either football or baseball there. And the experience is different for an athlete than it is for a non-athlete rat. How is it different? Or I assume you picked up on that because you had friends that weren't playing sports.
Yeah, so I had, first of all, your rat year, they mix everyone together. You're put in a company based on your height, and you're with that for all 4 years. And so,
wait a minute. So there was one company of like giant guys?
Yeah, so it starts alpha. It was hilarious, and I was the tallest rat. But it starts
you were the tallest in your class.
Oh, yeah. Even the basketball guy.
Really?
Taller than the basketball guys.
Wow.
Yeah. There's a picture of me, and, they do it by height, and I'm still just, boop. Still see the little, I guess gray hat and everything. But they did it, so the short guys always had Napoleon complexes. And
the whole company?
Oh, yeah. They were the most ruthless ones because they would just yell at you, and they were like little... They were like the rats because they were just sitting there and you're like, all right, little chihuahua guy, go away from me. And they're like, get me out of there. I'm like, what are you doing yelling at me?
He's looking straight up.
Oh, yeah. It was entertaining. But, I mean, I had so many people that from Richmond, I mean, it's like the mecca of VMI for relationships, and tell me, like, just be fly on the wall. Just don't think. I'm like, I'm the tallest guy there. How am I going to do that? But
the giant fly in the room doesn't avoid detection. Yeah.
No. So I don't know, handled it relatively well. And, I remember so to your question, I mean, during the rat line, you're not supposed to have your phone and everything else. Like, we would go to the locker room, we had our phone. I would call my dad and be like, I want to come home. I want to come home. I want to come home. He's like, quit being such a pussy and just keep on going. I was like, I just want to come home. I want to come home. So he wrote me a letter my rat year that I kept and still have. It says 1 day at a time. Very simplistic, but like that's kind of a way that I still continue to live my life is, 1 day at a time. Things are going to be bad. Things are going to be good, but one day.
You'd been through worse in high school.
That's also very true. And so I would, it's a mental game. I would, during a sweat party or what have you, I would, sing songs in my head, and I'm sure you have all the kind of tricks and things too. And like there's some song.
It's a game, man.
Oh yeah, it's all a mental game.
It's a game.
And I kind of thrive in that. I'm like, well, all right, here we go. It'll be fun. But yeah, we definitely were treated differently. Being an athlete, sometimes from non-athlete people as a rat, they would grill you even more because they knew you were getting out of stuff.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, to be fair, we were, but they also weren't getting their head beaten in by seniors.
They weren't playing football.
Yeah, no. And I don't know if I shaved this morning, but when I get my 5 o'clock shadow, you can kind of see the scars in my chin. I mean, I had my chin busted open my rat year by a senior. It was 200 and, he was 250 pounds defensive end. I was like 210 pounds playing defensive end, just getting steamrolled by the offensive lineman on the practice squad and everything. And he just went up under and cut my chin open. I ended up getting stitches there. I've had like 20 stitches in my chin just from, because I like the Brett Favre old school chin strap.
Really?
Oh, yeah, that was my thing.
Oh.
Which was just dumb.
Not me, man. Give me all the padding I can handle.
No, so I had that little soft. I guess mine was more Aaron Rodgers than the Brett Favre.
Yeah, but Rodgers and Favre were not playing outside linebacker.
That's also true. So I busted up my chin a decent amount and had significant scars, but I like them. They're like my battle wounds.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, the rat line lasts for 8-9 months or however long it is. Then you break out. Then you're just a regular guy there. And I still had to go to practice and had to get tutors for Spanish class because I'm practicing and waking up, watching film, and doing this, and then having to start homework at
because you're a Division I athlete.
Yeah, and that can be plus or minus from a competitive standpoint, which is probably why we didn't win crazy amount of games, because you have to do the military thing and then start practicing, and
it's not the full focus of anything.
No, not at all.
Yeah. So what was your best record?
I don't know. Probably 4 games, 3 or 4 games.
Okay.
I don't know.
So never had a winning record?
No, not while I was there.
Has VMI ever had like good teams where they're winning 8-9 games?
I know in like the 80s they were really good.
Okay.
Or pretty good. And then I think 2005 they ended up with a winning record, and then more recently under one of the coaches from UVA, when he was there, switched over and head coach at VMI, they ended up winning the Southern Conference.
Oh wow.
So they ended up being knowing how to recruit right, and had ended up having good talent, and then the transfer portal thing started. And now, they lose a lot of players.
Well, I mean, it's hard to recruit kids out of high school to go to VMI because of the military thing and the rat line. And, like, why would I go through that? I can just go to this other school that's equally as competitive, but I don't have to go. I don't have to be a rat.
Well, that's the thing, too. A lot of the recruits that we had, we had a handful of guys that, they were 5-star recruits and then happened to blow out a knee. And so then they're like, oh, okay. All the big schools are like, oh, we're almost like the team of misfits in a way.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm kind of an example of that. I was, all beat up and didn't really get looked at by many other schools. So I was like, oh, all right, I'll be the misfit and keep playing. And it doesn't mean that we weren't talented as individuals and what have you, but it's just
a little more beat up than the average guy.
Yeah. And I had to deal with getting yelled at by short guys all the day.
All right, so you graduated college. What was the plan?
So, I didn't really have, so my senior year, spring senior year, I was like, hey, I think I'm going to not use my redshirt year. I'm going to just graduate, and then figure something else out.
Did your love of football sort of subside at that point?
I was just a little frustrated, just given that, I was coming off my redshirt junior year was my best season I've ever had. And I was like, well, why not go out with a bang, and having to rehab the shoulder and get back into shape and everything else that, it was just tough. So one of the potential routes I was going to take was to graduate and then do my redshirt year at Richmond as a graduate student there. I talked to some of the players after working out with them, during the summers, and they were like, yeah, why don't you just do that? And I always half kid that, my dad was my manager, and he was a terrible manager because he didn't tell me to do that. So my senior year, spring semester, I was on track to graduate. I ended up dropping a class so that I could go back for my 5th year and play one more season. And before that, we were playing a in-house scrimmage, red versus white scrimmage, first team offense versus first team defense, and I was back on my starting position. Everything was great, and they ran like a counter sweep or something, a sweep outside, and I don't know why I did it, but I dove for him on the outside, and then subluxed my shoulder that I just had surgery on and rehabbed. So that was just kind of a heartbreaking thing that happened, because then that was a 4-week rehab recovery, 3 or 4 weeks of, hey, can't play this game, but ended up coming back for the UVA game. And
y'all played UVA when you were there?
Oh yeah, we got a nice little payday from getting beat up by UVA.
I didn't realize VMI played UVA that recently.
Yeah, so we played them two times when I was there.
Were the games close?
First quarter, first 5 minutes. Yeah.
When it was 0-0.
Yeah. No, I think one of the games we played, it was actually a pretty close game at halftime. Like, maybe 10-3 or something, and then y'all have a lot more people than us, and
a lot more people and 3 and 4 star recruits that didn't get hurt.
Yeah. So 49 to something, and that was actually my my redshirt freshman year. I was second string, and ended up earning my scholarship. But we played UVA. And the first string guy, he was like an all-American or all-conference dude, just big, huge, awesome. Opening kickoff ran down. He blew out his ACL. And that game, it was one of the earlier ones in the season that, they play. And I was then put in the position to play the entire game. And I remember at halftime, it was just over by the trash can, just like I can't catch my breath at all, and continue to play. And I actually had a pretty good game that game. But that kind of started, redshirt freshman playing, and continued to grow for the next 2 seasons. And then fast forward, had that shoulder deal, and then that scrimmage of playing, or the inter squad scrimmage, then had that other setback, and I was like, what is happening? Like, this sucks. So I ended up playing that season, one of my best, but, just kind of, to your point, was like, hey, I love football, but just my head's not in it. I just need to get out of this place after being here for so long.
Yeah.
So ended up graduating in December. I was actually in the locker room talking one time, like, hey, what do you want to do? And I was like, I kind of want to move to Australia. I did a report in 3rd grade on a country. You had to do those country reports or whatever, and I picked Australia. Learned about it, ended up liking it, saw Santa Claus on a surfboard, and was like, that is cool. I want to do that. So ended up, one of the guys that one of my teammates, his aunt lived in Australia, and was like, hey, I can reach out and figure something out, and, you can go there and live with her, or here's the contact information, you figure it out. So I was like, sweet. So graduated December, packed my bags in January, and flew across the globe.
No job lined up when you were flying?
I had like kind of a job lined up. So originally I wanted to just go to the Outback and like decompress, and
Outback with the 7 deadliest snakes
in
the world.
Yeah, why not? Had a few accidents before, we just keep on going.
What's a brown snake?
Yeah. So that was the original goal, and then I was like, hey, maybe I should make money. So my uncle happened to do some work over there, and got me in good contacts with the bank in Sydney, and ended up working. It was supposed to be like a 2-month job and then come back home, but ended up working there for 2 months, and then worked as a temp under the group reporting. So when they're doing their annual reports, like writing up the notes in the back of the reports, and ended up getting hired to stay on a little bit longer. I kind of half kid, but one of the reasons why they said I got the job is because they liked my American accent and Southern drawl. They've never had an American work on their team, so I was like, cool.
Wow.
Yeah,
you definitely don't sound Australian.
No, I do have a pretty good Australian impersonation sometimes, but
I know you're happily married now, but Australian women apparently love American men.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I am happily married. I will say the accents got kind of annoying, and I just kind of actually did it. But they always end like their sentences with a like, "Hello, how are you doing?" And I was like, "Oh God, just stop doing that." But yeah, I would turn on the accent very hard and be like, "Hey, how are you doing? My name's Chris."
A little McConaughey kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm from Virginia. They're like, Virginia? I'm like, oh god. But no, had the time of my life there. Was there for almost a year. Just absolutely loved it. Ended up going to New Zealand, going out to the Outback. Went up to the Great Barrier Reef. My sister flew out there. We had such a great time.
Same sister that was on the jet ski?
No, the youngest sister was out there. So, the memories that I have out there, it was really like, okay, I've been in military school for 4.5 years. Don't really know what the real world's like. Let's give it an experiment of, hey, here's all your freedoms and you're making good money here. And it was great. I loved it. I would never take that away from, that experience away from me.
Why didn't you stay?
There was a few reasons. One of them, the work visa that I had required you to stay there and then then you had to, in order to extend it, have to do like 3 months working on a farm or something. And I was potentially planning on doing that, but my sister was getting married in September, so I had to fly back for that. And then I kind of had some weird visa issues that I was like, yeah, this just seems like a lot of work. And then I was, just decided that it was a little harder to go back.
What if you had done a report in 3rd grade on North Korea?
I may have ended up there, or maybe, I don't know, probably, I don't know, knowing myself, maybe would have ended up there.
You would have seriously thought about it.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm glad I didn't.
It's probably a good idea.
Yeah. But I remember, even I just was obsessed with dingoes, obsessed with just that Australia was, I guess this kind of goes back to my risk taking self.
Yeah.
I was like, it's deadly out there. There's dingoes. They eat you. And then, I was a big Seinfeld guy, like, dingo ate your baby and everything. I was like, oh.
Kangaroos are no joke, too.
Yeah. I actually tried to go kangaroo hunting. Because
that's a thing.
Yeah, and on some of the farms way outside the city of Sydney, because Sydney's not very, friendly towards that stuff. But ended up going out there into the mountains, which I didn't even know it snowed in Australia. That's how ignorant I was. But took a train out there and was planning on going hunting, kangaroo hunting, but there was so much snow that apparently if there's snow on the ground you can't shoot a kangaroo or something. I don't know all the details, but
why is kangaroo hunting a thing?
They're like deer over there.
Right. So they're all over the place.
Oh yeah, they are you would see them hit on the side of the road, and they're bigger than deer. Some of them can be, and I was like, oh my gosh. And it's
so conservation's a thing.
Yeah, huge thing. But I don't know. I guess I ate kangaroo, but yeah, I didn't get one.
You don't remember what it tasted like?
I know. It's probably beef or something.
Yeah.
Beef or chicken, probably typically.
I would think rabbit, but I don't know why. I
don't know.
Rabbit.
Yeah.
Maybe the ears. The ears are similar to rabbits.
I don't know. I think you eat the tail. I can't really remember.
That seems like it would, I have no idea.
I can't remember. I could be just completely making that up.
We could probably Google it later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I ate something that I remember was kangaroo. I had emu, alligator, or crocodile. Did the whole thing. Just full experience out of military. It was like, walked across the Harper Bridge, went to the Sydney Opera House. Actually broke a Guinness Book of World Record down there. Yeah.
For what?
World's largest blind date. And it is factually true. You could Google that one too.
What?
So I don't know. I was literally, knew no one, was social butterfly, wanting to soak up everything. And so, and I've also always wanted to break a world record. That was, I had the Guinness books growing up, and we were sitting there, and I found it on Meetup or one of those things, like, come join us to break the world record. And I was like, all right, cool. So it's a blind date. You answer a questionnaire a little bit. They kind of sort of match you with someone. You're matched for an hour. You sit there and have a date. And I think it was 473-ish couples.
Okay.
So 800, whatever that math is.
Still a record?
I think so. I did two truths and a lie the other day. And medivac'd twice and world record holder are my truths, which I'm giving away for if I ever play that game again. at a sorority. But I think I Googled it because people I played with didn't believe me that was a world record because it's so insanely kind of dumb. But
seems breakable too.
Very breakable.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it was, but it was kind of an excuse to go to the opera house, go inside. I'm not really a opera guy or show guy.
But it's the Opera House in Sydney, though.
Right. Yeah. So it was like, okay, why? I'm here. This is such an iconic building, and so that was my venture down there was to the to the Opera House. Yeah. And I'm Guinness Book. I had the printout sheet. They sent the email that Chris Harper's a Guinness Book World Record holder, and I was like, sweet.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah. So that was it really. That my Australia, like I did skydiving when I was there, bungee jumping, just the risk stuff that I said I probably wouldn't have done.
Didn't go all the way to the edge, but came pretty close to
it.
it.
Yeah. And getting out there was actually, I don't know, an experience too, because, being right out of college, don't have any money, just trying to get the cheapest way possible. So I ended up flying from Richmond to Dallas to LA to China, and then China down to Sydney. And on a map and globe you look at it, you're like, oh, China's relatively close to Sydney. No, that was another 9-hour flight.
I was just say not even close.
Yeah, I left on a Monday and got there Wednesday evening and got off the train and was staying in a hostel and just kind of broke down because I was like, what did I do? I'm sleep deprived. I don't know anyone here. It's just
you're exhausted.
Yeah, essentially.
So when you came back to Richmond, what were you doing?
So I came back. I was speaking with one of my dad's friends that he ran or had a catering business on the side. So I was doing some bartending, catering, bartended a bar mitzvah and some other just random events. And then so during college, I was an intern at the current place that I work now, and I came back and our founder is a VMI guy, and he was like, hey, would you like to we're building out our team, our research department, would you want to come join in a way and come interview, and I know you intern and you did good work, so want to come join? And I was like, sure.
The VMI network in Richmond is crazy strong.
Oh yeah, it goes back to it's the mecca of VMI. It's like you go to Lexington, you kind of still want to be close, but you want to be in Richmond. So I ended up coming back and starting actually, I guess November. What is today? Oh, 9th. November 14th of 2014. Ended up starting there and I've been there ever since.
Oh wow. Okay. So, and what high level, what do you do there?
So highest level, I'm a research analyst. So writing about stocks, pitching those stocks to our portfolio managers, and then investing that money. That has, this job has essentially unlocked so many great opportunities. I've gotten to speak to CEOs of defense companies and potato processing companies and tinfoil companies, and it's probably one of the coolest jobs that I could think of. That it just the autonomy of, I'm a generalist. I get to look at kind of any different stocks, any different market caps, and any different sectors, and just really dive into their business and see if they're a good company with a competitive advantage. Just the classic kind of Warren Buffett approach. So
are you mostly looking at financials, or are you looking at non-financials, or both?
Me personally, I'm not. I don't get excited looking at financials in terms of like financial companies. Like from a business part, we do look at like balance sheet, income statement, and cash flow, and so we model and look at financials like that way. But from a sector stuff, I tend to like kind of in my core competency of things that I like or can understand makes it more interesting and more enjoyable to look at those kind of companies.
No, absolutely. All right, let's close with you telling me about your wife and your kid.
Yeah, so
you got 2 kids now.
Just one. So, well, first my sister, she has 4 in a 4.5 year span. They live a mile down. Yeah. They live
Wait,
about.
how old's the youngest now for your sister?
He is four. No, he's a 2020 baby. So yeah, 3.5.
So she has 3.5 to like 8.
7 or 8. Oh yeah, he just turned. His birthday was in November. So yeah,
3.5 to 8.
yeah. So
There's a lot going on there.
oh yeah, and it's fun when I go over and
Because you get to leave.
Exactly. So I've had my training of being the best rent-a-uncle ever. You know, I'm a magician. I perform at their birthday parties.
And a comedian.
Yeah, and a comedian for them. And so I love it. So that sort of in a weird way prepped me for, being a parent. I come from a big family, and family's very important to me. So kind of was relatively prepared for that. And we had my daughter's birthday was just, I guess last week. So my wife and we met, back in 2018 and ended up getting married during COVID, which was another set of adversity because we had a venue picked out and all that fun stuff. And then having to pivot about 100 times over,
to a much smaller
wedding, which once again, hindsight, was wonderful because it was more intimate, and I didn't have my dad's lawyer's best friend's cat, person that was there or whatever. So it was, I loved it, and I hope that my daughter, we got the pictures and did the videography, and hopefully I can show my daughter that less is more sometimes.
Well, because your father in Virginia, and I think one of the unwritten rules is you pay for the wedding, right?
Apparently, yeah.
I have 2 daughters that are not married right now. I'm not looking forward to that invoice.
I know. Yeah. So I mean that they should go that route too. But yeah, no. So we met in 2018. I think one of the greatest things that we did was we traveled a lot. She's a boss at her job, and so her job ended up taking us to Vienna, and we, for just a President's Club or, hitting something through work that
you went for a few days.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then we extended the trip and went to Croatia and ended up getting engaged in Croatia. Kind of set the bar way too high there.
Was that planned before you left the States?
Oh yeah. I was cool as a cucumber, had the ring in my backpack, making sure that I didn't lose it. And they were like, would you like insurance? I was like, no, we don't have anything valuable on this trip. Don't worry about it. And I was extremely nervous for that. And
it's weird.
Yeah.
How nervous you get.
It was. And I did probably one of the best, I Instagrammed a photographer and was like, hey, can you meet me at this place? I'm going to propose to her, all through social media, which was crazy. And, walk up and I was like, hey, here's my phone. Can you take a picture of us? And my wife was like, okay, something's up, and kind of know. And I was like, nervous. And she's like, has a camera. She's like, oh, I can take a picture on this camera and send it to you. I'm like, yeah, that'd be great. And then I get on one knee. I'm like, will you marry you? She's like, what? I was like, I mean,
it's legal in Croatia. You can marry yourself.
It's like, well, what they say, you have to love yourself before you give yourself to others. And her answer wasn't really as great as mine. My question, she was like, did you ask my dad first? And I was like, yes, of course I did. I'm a Southern gentleman, of course.
Is your wife from Virginia?
No, so she's from Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Which she's from, that's where we ended up getting married, up there as well. And they were a little bit more stricter on some of the COVID stuff too. So we ended up, it was kind of fun because we ended up having like a college party, hotel party as a reception, which was great. Yeah. And, rented out the top levels, and it was awesome.
What part of PA?
Harrisburg, or she's from Mechanicsburg, but it's relatively close.
Southern central part of the state.
So it's only like 3.5 hours to from here to get there, depending on 95.
Right.
Add a child with it, plus or minus. Well, no minus, all plus.
All plus.
Yeah. So.
How old's your daughter now?
She is 1. She's my wife is 6'2". I'm 6. Well, I say 6'5". I'm really closer to 6'6", but 6'6" is kind of freak tall, so I just say 6'5".
You're like 6'5" and 7'8" kind of thing.
Yeah. So
and you're rounding down from that.
Yeah. Most people in the program, always like 5'11", round up to 6 feet. I typically round down. It's kind of weird being 6'6", but yeah. So my daughter, she's a giant already, and hopefully,
So she's going to be like 6'1" to 6'3" maybe.
Yeah, and I'm trying to, look at the best return on investment from a sport aspect. And granted, I'll let her do, whatever she wants, but
you might nudge her.
Rowing and tennis seem like the best ROI from a, low kind of coaching and gear and commitment.
Basketball may not be bad either.
I know. My wife was a stud basketball player in high school, and I don't know, maybe basketball too.
I imagine your wife might be nudging your daughter towards basketball.
Yeah. But I'm a terrible basketball player, so I want to be active in my my kids' coaching like my dad was, and I don't bring anything to basketball except for you got 5 fouls, use them.
Do you think your daughter will listen to this recording someday?
I don't know. I hope so. I think that part of this I've tried to write down my story in different ways. I wanted to write a book before about it, and just kind of highlight some of the unique things that have happened in my life and the kind of way that it's taken me, and how to handle adversity in ways.
It's really impacted you.
Yeah. And I don't think that I always show it. I think my wife would say that I don't always show my, different emotions that I have from that accidents or from my history or my past. But, I think that it has impacted me and made me a stronger person and can handle adversity. And, I think that attitude is the one thing you can't have taken away from you. And so,
not that you want to have another jet ski accident or caboodle accident. Well, Chris, thank you so much for doing this. I'm glad Andrew finally connected us. Your story is unbelievable, and you're still a young man.
Yeah. Still young, and hopefully now that I'm a father, definitely more risk adverse than I've ever been. So
probably, yeah, that's natural.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks for doing this, man.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to wherever you listen to podcasts. We'd also really appreciate if you'd rate and review us. You can find us at scodupodcast.com.